get out and talk to people, step away from the computer. In the States, United States rather, there are estimates that as many as 80% of all jobs never make it onto a job board. There's no shortage of job boards. There are 40,000 niche job boards out there. And you throw in the newspapers and the traditional media. But most people, Jane, instead of going out and talking, they spend most of their time on computers. And so you don't have to spend 80% of your time out having conversations, but don't spend 100% of your time looking at job boards.
Welcome to Jane Jackson Careers, a podcast that takes your career to the next level. Here's your host, Jane Jackson, author of Amazon Careers bestseller, Navigating Career Crossroads.
Welcome back to my Careers podcast, where I interview fascinating professionals who've made amazing career changes or are leaders in their field. And I interview a lot of entrepreneurs as well. And one such wonderful entrepreneur is Mac Prichard, who's in Portland, Oregon. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about him. He's the founder and publisher of Mac's List, an online community for people looking for rewarding, creative, and meaningful work. More than 80,000 people a month visit the site, which includes a job board, a blog, and courses about the nuts and bolts of job hunting and career management. Right up my alley, isn't it? Mac hosts a weekly podcast called Find Your Dream Job and is author of the new book, which was launched on the 1st of February this year, Land Your Dream Job Anywhere. How good does that sound? So, of course, I have to talk to Mac. We met, I believe, on Twitter or LinkedIn. And then I was on Mac's podcast, and I thought, wow, he's got an even more interesting story. So let's find out about him. So welcome, Mac. Thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Jane.
Well, it's great to have you here. I just want to go through your career history very briefly, because it's been such an interesting one. Because you have a Master of Public Administration from Harvard Kennedy School, and your career has been amazing. You were researcher for Joe Kennedy for Congress in the 1980s, and then a public affairs manager at the Oregon Department of Transportation, also a speechwriter for Governor John Kitzhaber in Oregon, National Communications Director, and now president of Prichard Communications, and a number of other amazing communications roles in between. So what a fascinating career journey, Mac. I think just to kick us off, how about you tell us about your early days, and when you were a little boy, what were your career aspirations?
Well, one of the gifts my parents gave me, Jane, was a strong work ethic. My father actually signed me up for a newspaper route, delivering newspapers when I was age 9. And I've been working ever since. It's been almost 50 years now. Mm-hmm. But when I was my parents also were very involved in the community. And I got from them an interest in politics and public service. And that led me to study politics in college. And when I graduated, Jane, I wanted to do 3 things. I wanted to write, I wanted to work on electoral campaigns, and I wanted to do human rights advocacy. And I couldn't have told you those goals in such a succinct manner, even after I got my bachelor's, but I was interested in all 3 of those things. And I've been fortunate in my career to be able to do that. And the first job I had after college was working on a U.S. Senate campaign in the United States. And then I took a position in Washington, D.C. with a human rights group that worked on U.S. Latin American policy in the 1980s. And that's where I learned my basic communication skills, how to write a news release, put together a newsletter, talk to reporters. And those skills served me well later in my career.
Wow. I mean, it's amazing, because going into government, politics, public service, it must mean that you had a strong desire to really make a difference within the community. Would you say your career anchor is dedication to a cause or service, or is it something else?
The constant that runs through all the jobs I've had, Jane, has been wanting to make a difference on issues I care about or in the community where I live and work. And I've worked for public agencies, nonprofits. Now I run 2 small businesses. They're both certified benefit corporations. They're called B Corps, and it's part of a global movement to use business as a force for social good. There are about 2,000 B Corps around the world, and I'm proud to be the owner of 2 of them.
How fantastic! I
Yeah.
mean, really making a difference to the community. That must be one of your top values is to give back as well, and really to help others. Because I think with your job board, Max List,
Mhm.
and the book that you've written, and everything that you do is to help people within their careers. Because if you've got a good career, you can earn money, you can build the life of your dreams. So it sort of all comes full circle, doesn't it?
It does. Service is a central value for me. I do want to say I've had great jobs and great opportunities. I've had my valleys too, in addition to the peaks. So I've had 2 long periods of unemployment. One of them was after I got that great degree from Harvard, and I remember, and this was candidly arrogance on my part. I thought, oh, now I have masters in from this Ivy League school. I'll never have problems finding a job again. And I was setting myself up for a fall, Jane, and it came fairly soon. So I say all that because one of the best lessons I'd learned during that period of unemployment in my early 30s after graduate school, I met with someone who said, uh, we think that our careers are going to be 45-degree angles and it's just going to be up, up, and up. And that's not the way it works. We have our peaks, but we have our valleys too. And the important thing is to learn from those experiences, both positive and negative, and apply them as you move forward.
Yeah.
One of the best lessons I've learned is just the value of generosity and giving to others, both in advice and time and service. And I think that has been a big part of the professional success I've had, and certainly a big part of the personal satisfaction I get too.
It's really interesting. You touched upon that, the way where you got your degree. And so you've got your Master of Public Administration from Harvard Kennedy School. And so that's great because Ivy League school, and that's what people aspire to. And then you think the jobs should come flooding in, shouldn't they?
Right.
And yet that was the challenging time. Why do you think that is?
I think what happened was I moved to Oregon to take a political job working for a mayoral candidate here, and I was his communications director at City Hall. Candidly, we lost the election, and the job went away, and I was stuck. I wasn't quite sure what to do next, and I think in hindsight, not having that clarity about where I wanted to go next was part of what was keeping me stuck. The other problem, Jane, and I didn't recognize it at the time, when I'd been out of work in the past, I'd always volunteered and I'd gotten involved in campaigns or community organizations. There are 3 great things you get from that. One is just this sense of giving back. But the second is it gets you out of the house. And I think one of the worst things that can happen when you're out of work is to spend a lot of time by yourself or at home. And the third great thing you get from volunteering when you're out of work is you connect with people, you show them what you can do. And so in addition to the satisfaction of service, you're growing your network and you're going to hear about opportunities. I didn't do that because, again, this is my arrogance. I thought, oh, well, I should get paid. Now I have this, I'm professional in my mid-30s and I don't have time to volunteer. I'm going to focus on my job hunt. And in hindsight, that was a mistake.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, because if something isn't working, you've got to do something different.
Yeah.
And if the offers are not flooding in because you've got that piece of paper, which would have taken a lot of time and effort and cost as well to achieve, it's quite disappointing. But you're absolutely right. Having clarity as to, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to use this degree so that it's going to benefit the most people and also be the solution to another company's problems? That clarity would help you to market. But I love it that you said that you started volunteering, because that definitely gets you out and about. And the people who also volunteer very often can be leaders of industry too, so you never know who you're going to meet. And then they get to know you. And I think one of the most important things when you actually secure a new role is the values of the organization, the culture, the people you're going to be with. And if you meet someone through volunteering, they get to know your heart as well.
Yes.
And I think that makes a big difference. Plus, if you're in between jobs and you're doing something good for someone else who's less fortunate than yourself, it helps to build up your own self-confidence and really make a difference in the world.
Yeah. Well said. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah. And so now your interesting career path, okay?
Mhm.
So going into politics, and then you were a researcher, and then you became a public affairs manager, and then you became a speechwriter. So
Mhm.
obviously your writing must be amazing. What was that like? I find that fascinating because not having worked within the public sector, I mean, I consult, but I haven't worked within it as an employee. Being a speechwriter for Governor John Kitsaba, that would have been so interesting.
It was a great job. And the challenge that comes with a job like that is you have to learn the voice of the person for whom you're writing speeches. And you have to be able to turn copy out fast. And candidly, I struggled with it at first. I'd never been a full-time speechwriter before, so it took a leap of faith to say, yes, I can do that. And I found, as with other opportunities, that you want to put in the work and the preparation, but so you just have to take a risk. And if you're clear about what the job requires and you put in the time and the effort in a focused way, chances are you'll be successful.
Yeah. What sort of pressure would you be under as a speechwriter? Because you've got to get it just right. And would you have quite tight deadlines if something needed to be written, or would you normally get quite a good lead time?
Well, both. Sometimes things had to be written quickly,
Mm.
and other times you had, if it was an important speech, there was a process. You'd prepare a draft. You'd go through multiple revisions. A lot of people would be involved. Usually there was a sort of a core group of 4 to 6 people, in addition to the governor, who would review it and give input. And it's very collaborative.
Mm.
And then other times the assignments were straightforward. Greetings at a convention, and those tended to be more routine. And there's a process you follow, a formula you follow in preparing them. But again, you have to pay attention to the details and get it right.
Yeah. This interesting career path that you followed, it's really been, moved round and up and down and the peaks and
Yeah.
the troughs and everything. So you must have quite strong resilience and self-reliance to be able to get over all of these challenges. What would you say would be the key elements to consider when actually making a career change?
It goes back to what we were talking about. I think the first thing, Jane, is back to what we were talking about earlier, having clarity about what you want to do. And I talk to a lot of job seekers. I've gone through this myself because I have switched sectors and roles. And sometimes people get stuck because they're looking at 2 or 3 options and they can't choose. And what I've found in my own career and what I've seen other people do successfully is they explore those options and they go out and talk to people, and they're clear about what interests them. There might be 2 or 3 career paths. By having conversations with people who are doing that work and raising your concerns and talking about objections employers might have about you trying to make that switch and how to overcome them, you get such great insights into what employers want, what kind of problems they face. You're just spot on talking about the importance of thinking about employers' problems and how you can address them. Because when you do that, you're clear about what those problems are. Pardon me. You're able to position yourself as a candidate, but you're also able to figure out if is this something I really want to do.
Yeah.
So having that clarity about your goals, having conversations with people who are doing it, not only give you insights into what employers want and what it takes to be successful, but you also start to uncover those hidden opportunities out there that never get advertised. And in most job markets, many positions never get posted publicly. They're filled by word of mouth. And if you want to be part of those conversations, informational interviews and networking is a great way to do that, particularly when you're going through a career change. And it's the best jobs I've ever had, like the speechwriter position, a job at City Hall. I was the spokesman for the Boston's Big Dig. Those positions were never advertised. And I wasn't somebody's nephew. I just inserted myself into conversations that were already happening about how those jobs were going to get filled and what employers were looking for.
Yeah. The power of the network is huge, because the majority of my clients get their next role through the network. In fact, I was having an exploratory conversation with one client this morning, and she wanted to know, all the different job search methods. And I said, you know what? First thing to do, network. Oh,
Yeah.
but it's a dirty word. I don't like schmoozing. But what people don't realize is networking is just building relationships, letting people know it's not really who you know, it's who knows what you can do. That's the most important thing. And if people know, you're a communication specialist, or you're a career coach, or you're a procurement specialist, or whatever it is, if people can go, that person is the go-to person for that particular skill set, then people will come to you. But I think so many people don't realize that they've got to get their name out there as well. And so talking is really important. And these days, with the power of LinkedIn and social media, it helps everything to get out there even more. And podcasting, Mac, because you have leading, very nice, what a nice segue that is. You have a wonderful podcast called Your Dream Job. And so tell me, why did you start that podcast?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, I run a site that includes a job board, and we get about 80,000 people a month who come to that site. I meet with job seekers frequently, and it's very flattering, Jane. They tell me how much they enjoy the job board, and I'll ask them, well, how's your search going? And so many of them say, well, I look at your job board every day, and I'm grateful for that. But I'll say, well, what else are you doing? Are you networking, doing informational interviews, volunteering, going to industry events? And most people say no. I'm looking at your board, this other board. So one of the ways we serve our readers and now our listeners is by providing through our blog and through the podcast nuts and bolts information about how to look for work. Many people here in the States they don't learn how to do that, and they don't take advantage often of the resources that are available, like career services offices at high schools or colleges. So often people find that first or second job through word of mouth, or they respond to some kind of posting, but they get stuck when they're looking for the third or fourth one because they don't know how to go out and have those conversations, how to network, and how to uncover the jobs, those hidden jobs that never make it onto job boards like mine.
Yeah. I mean, it's fantastic having that job board right there, because at least people can see what roles are open at this point in time. But I always say that you mustn't just rely on a job board. You have to do everything else as well. There are recruitment agencies. There is the networking, which is the number one. I always recommend networking as number one for sure. But I think pulling all of the different job search methods together, that will give you a really solid marketing plan moving forward. Yeah. And now, not only do you have the wonderful Your Career, my dream job, my podcast is Your Career, yours is Your Dream Job. I think we should combine forces, Mac. I'm in Sydney, you're in Portland, Oregon.
I would love that. Yeah.
and it's lovely weather down here. But then you've also written the book. Okay, let me get the title right. The book, Land Your Dream Job Anywhere. So tell me the story of the start of the planting the seed of I'm going to write this book, and then right through to the launch on 1st of February.
Sure. It really grew out of the conversations I was having with job seekers who would contact me because of the board, and they'd want to talk about, you want to meet for coffee or to pick my brain or to have informational interviews. And I'm sure you've had this experience too, Jane. You start hearing the same questions again and again. And so in order to serve as many people as possible, we started a blog and we wrote about the most commonly asked questions and topics that job searchers need to know about. But some people prefer books to blogs or podcasts to books. So we try to meet people where they are. And the book takes the best lessons and principles that I've learned running the Max List site and the job board, and also from my own personal experience, but also hundreds of conversations with job seekers and employers. And our goal is to make the job search faster and easier for seekers by giving them the principles and practical tips they need to get the job they want. And so we take people through goal setting and self-assessment and teach them basic networking and skills. And also we talk about interviews and how to negotiate offers and then how to apply these principles throughout your career.
Mm-hmm. Oh, fantastic. A very valuable resource, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think it'll definitely help so many job seekers. Here in Australia, our unemployment rate currently, as of this week, is 5.9%.
Okay.
How does that compare with the United States?
I think the national rate is just at about 5%, 4.9.
Yeah. Okay. And obviously some areas, it's a little bit tougher to secure another role
Sure.
than other areas. How do you feel? I'm just curious to think in America, because you can get in a car and you can drive across the states.
You can.
How open are people to maybe moving to where the jobs are if they're in an area that's maybe a little bit more depressed?
It's interesting you should bring that up because there's research that shows Americans are less likely to move even short distances for work. And that wasn't the case right after World War II and through the 50s and 60s. So people, and so if you do stay in an area that has a high unemployment rate, it's going to be challenging because you're competing with more people.
Yeah. It's it's interesting because in America, and also we have so many people coming to Australia, and I've moved country 5 times, so it's not just city, it's countries, and there are challenges to making that move as well, and you have to reinvent yourself or reinvent your career each time. So do you touch on maybe career reinvention as well?
We do. It's in the book, and certainly we've done a number of podcasts about that, about how to start over in a new city, how to change sectors and careers. I've had that experience myself personally. I grew up in the middle of the United States, and right after college moved to the East Coast to Washington, D.C., and then I was there for 2 years and left and lived 9 years in Boston, up in New England, on the East Coast as well. And then, Jane, right after graduate school, I moved 2,300 miles to Oregon. And I actually, when I had the idea of moving here, I didn't actually know anybody in Oregon. I came out on my first job hunting trip during spring break, and then came back in June after graduation to interview for positions. But so I know firsthand how challenging it can be to make those switches and reinvent yourself. And Oregon is a very popular place for people to come from all around the country. So I also meet a lot of job seekers who are going through that as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's fun. Oh, Oregon's such a beautiful place. I've been there only once before, about 30 years ago.
Oh, gosh.
So long ago. But it was just such a beautiful, beautiful city. And so now with Mac's List, you focus on Oregon and Washington State?
We do. The job board, you'll find listings in those 2 states. But we serve a national audience through our podcast. More than 80% of our downloads come from outside of Oregon. Yeah. We even get 15% of our downloads from overseas. Canada's number 1, but I think Australia's number 2.
Yeah. Oh, Australia's there. I'm listening. I'm one of them.
I think our numbers came up when you were on the show. But both the podcast, the blog, and the books, and the book rather, they do serve a national audience.
Fantastic. Now, what I want to find out is what are your top 3 tips, Mac, for job search success?
Well, number 1 is don't wait to be picked. Too many people, I meet so many folks, Jane, who say, I want to work at company X or at nonprofit Y. And I'll say, well, have you reached out to them? And they haven't started those conversations, I think in large part because they don't know how to do it. And so instead they check the website of the organization and wait for that posting to appear. And of course, when the job is advertised, your challenge then becomes you're one of 100 resumes that are in a stack. And we both know that, and people who've been working for a long time know that if you have some personal connection, it can be the weakest of ties to people inside an organization. You're likely, the odds of you getting an interview go way, way up. So number 1, don't wait to be picked. Second, know what you want. And again, I know people struggle with this, being clear about what the next opportunity is that they're most excited about. So if you have a short list, explore them and have conversations with people in those fields. But when you know what you want, you make it so much easier for people to help you and to say yes when you ask for help. And people do want to help you in your job search. That's why they agree to have coffee with you or to do an informational interview or a networking meeting. But they can't figure out what it is you need help with. You've got to tell them. So that would be number 2. And number 3 is get out and talk to people. Step away from the computer. Again, I run a job board. I'm very proud of the service and the value we offer to our readers and to our advertisers, the employers who post with us. But in the States, United States rather, there are estimates that as many as 80% of all jobs never make it onto a job board. And there's no shortage of job boards. There are 40,000 niche job boards out there. And you throw in the newspapers and the traditional media. But most people, Jane, instead of going out and talking, which is the third tip I encourage people to follow, they spend most of their time on computers. And so you don't have to spend 80% of your time out having conversations, but don't spend 100% of your time looking at job boards.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, hiding behind a computer it's a safe option, but it's not the best or most effective option, is it? So thanks for those top 3 tips. That's very valuable. What I'm going to do, Mac, is I'm going to have all of your links to your Twitter handle, to Mac's list, where to purchase your wonderful new book on my show notes on janejacksoncoach.com. And I hope that your book will be able to reach even more people so that it can help them when they're going through their transition too. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you today. Mac, do you want to leave us with any parting words of wisdom?
Just be clear about what you want and don't be afraid. Go out and chase it. And I think you'll be very surprised at the results you get and how much people want to help you.
Mm-hmm. I think make your own magic happen, yes?
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, lovely. Well, thank you so much for your time, Mac. It was great chatting to you, and I hope to have you on the show again in a few months' time and you tell me how the book's going. Okay, that would be a pleasure. Thank you, Jane. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. You can get a free audiobook download and free 30-day trial at audibletrial.com/Jane Jackson Careers. There are over 180,000 book titles to choose, so give it a go and get your free audiobook today from audibletrial.com/Jane Jackson Careers.
You've been listening to Jane Jackson Careers. Sign up to receive regular career advice at janejacksoncoach.com.